So this is 145, Anuccheda 145 of the Kṛṣṇa Sandarbha. And the subtitle of this Anuccheda 145 are the bodies of the gopis are transcendental. And 145.1 is Uddhava. You know, Uddhava is Krishna's friend.
Hmm.
And he went to Vrindavan to console the inhabitants of Vrindavan because they were feeling a lot of pain from his separation. And so he was so blown away by the devotees' love for Krishna that he especially. I'm just reading the chapter now. I just got done reading the chapter about Nanda and Yashoda. I mean, there's nobody more fortunate than Mother Yashoda. Not even Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, even the goddess Lakshmi didn't have the love that Mother Yashoda had for Krishna. And so they're eternal associates, and Jiva Goswami is just trying to clear up some misconceptions about, how they took birth and how they appeared in Vrindavan. Some people say they're Prishni and Sutapa or whatever in their previous lives, but they're actually eternal uh, parents of Krishna. They're not. They didn't take birth as anybody. Brahma didn't give him a benediction. Brahma can't even do that. He can't give him a benediction. Brahma can't even do that. So what? So it's just based on they're all eternal, and they became partial manifestations of Prishni and Sutapa were partial manifestations. They entered the eternal parents of Krishna entered their bodies. But that's neither here nor there. And of course, all the gopis are completely transcendental. I'm just going to read the first legible part, and then I just have. Can you read that in your phone?
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay,
can
I'm
see
just
that.
going to read the first three paragraphs, and then you can read the second three. And if you have any questions, just stop me, and then we'll go from there. Uddhava aspires from the dust of the gopis' feet. In this way, it's described that these gopis, prayasis, have divine bodies that are constituted of bliss, ananda, like Sri Krishna, and they associate with Krishna exclusively in these blissful spiritual bodies. The majesty of their bodies is expressed in verses such as that of Sri Sukha. Quote, in the sphere of the rasa dance, Bhagavan, the son of Devaki, who was encircled by the gopis, appeared exceedingly beautiful, like a magnificent emerald strung in the midst of golden gems. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-7. Sri Uddhava also, while offering obeisance to gopis, first describes them as the topmost among embodied beings, Tanubrit. Quote, among embodied beings on this earth, these cowherd women alone are supreme because they're intrinsically endowed with the highest love, Ruda Bhava, exclusively for Govinda, the self of the entire cosmos. Such intensity of love is aspired for not only by those who fear material existence, the mumukshus, but also by the sages, the muktas, and even by us, the bhaktas. Of what value are the three births of a Brahmana or repeated births as Brahma for one in whom aesthetic relish for the stories of the infinite Lord has been awakened? Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-58. Now
Hmm.
uh, you can read the next two paragraphs and I'll put it up then one more.
Okay. Then, in the next verse, Uddhava reiterates the opinion of others that the gopis were ordinary human beings who needed to be purified by Krishna's direct association as a prerequisite to liberation. What comparison could possibly be drawn between these forest-dwelling women who are tainted by their infidelity to their worldly husbands on the one hand, and this most exalted love, Ruda Bhava, for Krishna, the Supreme Self, Paramatma, on the other hand, or on the other? Surely Ishvara directly grants the highest welfare to one who constantly worships him, uh, even without knowing his true identity, just as the king of medicine's immortal nectar cures all diseases even when used unwittingly. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-59.
You can
Uddhava
read this
then
next verse.
was that I've got what was that? You want me to read
You
this
can read
one
this
too?
next verse, the grace of the self-manifested.
Okay. Uddhava then refutes this view, saying the grace of self-manifest or the grace self-manifested to the cowherd women of Raj, uh, whose longing was fulfilled when Krishna danced with them in the Ras festival, placing his stout arms about their necks, was not attained by Lakshmi Shri, who is ever attached to his bosom, nor by the celestial damsels, who are favored with the fragrance and splendor of a lotus. How then could other women expect to receive such grace? Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-60.
By this statement, Uddhava makes it evident that the gopis are Krishna's beloveds, Priyasis, and superior even to the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. He thus establishes that their forms are absolutely eternal. By the words, quote, the grace self-manifested, end quote, na prasada udagat, he indicates the preeminence of this grace implicit within them as a perpetual state of being. And then in the next verse, Uddhava discloses that his highest aspiration is to become a dust particle united with the gopi's feet. Quote, let me become a shrub, creeper, or herb in the forests of Vrindavan, devoted to the dust of the gopis' feet, for they abandoned their families as well as the conventional path of virtue, both of which are extremely difficult to give up, in order to tread the path of Rudabhava leading to Mukunda, which is eagerly sought even by the personified Shrutis, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-61. In this verse, the dust of the gopis' feet has been established as the supreme goal of human life by the words, quote, to tread the path of Rudabhava leading to Mukunda, which is eagerly sought even by the personified Shrutis, end quote. Here by mentioning in Vrindavan, end quote, Uddhava has established that Vrindavan too has embodied the same nature as the ultimate goal of human life. Okay, read the these two paragraphs there.
Um, Commentary. In the previous Anuccheda, Jiva Goswami stated that the gopis who have parental affection for Krishna are beyond any contact with ignorance, and thus their bodies are not material. Here he establishes the same criteria for the gopis, an example, the Prayasis, who consider Krishna as their paramour. With this intent, he first refers to a verse of Sri Shuka, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-7, that describes Krishna's meeting with the gopis in the Vrindavan forest during the night of the Ras Leela. In this verse, Krishna is compared to a magnificent emerald, Marakata, and the gopis to golden gems. This comparison is given to illustrate their transcendental beauty. Bhagavan appears exquisitely beautiful, uh, as, uh, Tisu Subhe, in the association of the gopis. He has such splendor in and of himself, but his beauty is enhanced still further in the association of the gopis. This could not be possible if the gopis were ordinary material beings. Sri Jiva next refers to Uddhava's reflections on the gopis. Uddhava was a great devotee of Krishna. Even as a child, he was so absorbed in the worship of Krishna that he didn't care even to eat. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:2. He was the most learned and wisest of the Yadavas, a disciple of Brihaspati, and a pure devotee, counselor, and beloved friend of Sri Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:46, 1 through 2.
That's what they said about Narada Muni too. He didn't care about sports. He
Yeah.
was a good boy, you know. And he wouldn't get involved in like frivolous sports. Indeed, Uddhava proclaimed that Krishna proclaimed that Uddhava was equal to him in qualities and appointed him as his representative on earth after his departure. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.431. This very Uddhava was sent by Krishna to Vraja with a message for the gopis who were engulfed in the pangs of separation from Krishna after his departure from Mathura. In this regard, Krishna's true intention was to educate Uddhava in the esoteric mysteries of prema bhakti and awarding him the opportunity to meet the gopis, the topmost lovers of Krishna. When Uddhava met the gopis and heard the poignant manner of their speech, he was humbled. He felt blessed by them and to be able to witness firsthand the extraordinary quality of their prema. Mahame Nugra Krita, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-27. Before leaving Braj, he recited 6 verses in their praise, 10:47, 58 through 63. Sri Jiva Goswami refers to these verses to point out the gopis' supreme excellence. He has given a detailed explanation of these verses in Vaishnava Toshini and Kṛṣṇa Sandarbha, but refers to them here principally to establish that the gopis have transcendental bodies and that achieving their grace is the highest perfection of life. The important point to be noted is that Uddhava prays to receive just a dust particle from the foot of these gopis. You read the last paragraph, and then you can read the first paragraph of the second Anuccheda there.
Okay. It was already shown that Krishna's associates in Dvarka, including Uddhava, have spiritual bodies, since Uddhava himself longs to become a servant of the gopis, implied by his prayer to become a shrub devoted to the dust of their feet. Then the gopis certainly must have spiritual bodies. This also implies from his admission that he too aspires for the most exalted prema, Ruda Bhava, of the gopis, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-58, and that even Lakshmi did not receive the grace from Krishna that the gopis did in the Rasa Leela, Srimad Bhagavatam 19:47-60. Only the recent gopis abandon their material forms. By use of negative inference, Vyattirika Shukadev now speaks 8 verses from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-9 to Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-16 in order to firmly establish these very same points. An example that the Prayasis are eternal associates of Sri Krishna endowed with transcendental blissful forms. To do so, he shows that other recent gopis who did not have spiritual bodies attained Krishna's association only after abandoning their material forms.
So there's two types of gopis, the ones that had eternal spiritual bodies and the ones that attained his association with material bodies. And they didn't have the qualification to see Krishna in their material form. So they were locked in their houses and they're, with their husbands and babies and stuff, and they didn't have a chance to go and see him. And they were so um, absorbed in Krishna that they left their material bodies at that point, and then they went to Krishna after that. Some of the gopis who were inside their houses were unable to escape, so they gave themselves to Krishna by closing their eyes and meditating on him. All their inauspiciousness was burnt in the intense fire of intolerable separation from their beloved. And when they attained his embrace in their meditation, the joy of that embrace dissolved all their contingent auspiciousness. And so, even though they thought of him as their paramour, they were united with none other than the Supreme Self, Paramatma. Thus, they gave up their bodies made of material elements, all their worldly bonds having been cut at that moment. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29, 9 through 11. Go ahead.
The gopis who were inside their houses, Antar Griha Gataha, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-9, were the ones who were rendering service to their husbands, as learnt from the preceding statement, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-6. A detailed explanation of these verses will be given in the Sandarbha 8:49. The meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-9 is indeed clear. The word asubham, inauspiciousness, uh, in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-10 refers to obstacles in meeting with Krishna, such as the fear of reprimand from their seniors and guardians. The word mangalam, contingent auspiciousness, refers to their anxious reflection on securing the assistance of their girlfriends, which is the sole means for them to reach Sri Krishna. After all, it has been said that for the Vaishnavas, there is no bondage to karma uh, and no birth. No karma bandhanam janam uh, Vaishnavam uh, cha vidyate. PP. I don't know what the
A
PP
Purana,
is.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Padma Purana 6 to 229:58. And you want me to do this one too? It is
Go
seen.
ahead.
It is seen in other scriptural passages as well as that certain words are used in context where their conventional meaning is impossible, such as the word Vishnu after the sage Brigu had kicked him in the chest. O great sage, by the touch of your foot, I got I oot, I
Foot.
have oh that foot. Okay, by the touch of your foot, I have become free of all sins. From now on, Lakshmi will always dwell on my bosom. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:89-11. In this verse, the true intent of the words of Sri Bhagavan, which is different from uh, one, what is that, lie, direct meaning.
From the direct
Um,
meaning.
oh, there's some spelling errors in this.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
bunch of mistakes. These are like uh,
okay, this was scanned. I
characterization.
remember you said this was scanned. Yeah, okay. So the direct meaning has to be deliberated upon. Uh, the same is to be done here also in reference to the disposition of the gopis' bondage to auspiciousness and inauspiciousness.
Yeah, you just kind of have to guess what it is. That's
Yeah,
the
that's the way
that's
the book I'm reading is like too. You know.
that's the problem with having these scanned OCR texts. This is the one my guru or my mentor, audiobook mentor gave me. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-11, the word Paramatmanam, the supreme self, indicates that Sri Krishna is naturally the supreme object of love. Parama prema spadatvam, according to the principle enunciated at the end of the chapter on Sri Brahma's prayers, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14, 54 and 5. The words Jara Budhyapi Sangata indicate that the gopis were united with Krishna through the effective conviction, Buddhi, that he was their paramour, Jara, but not that this was the explicit nature of their attainment. By his preferential regard for this mood of love, bhava, Shukadeva reveals the superior force of their mode of worship, bhajan. By using the word jara, a paramour, he shows the unrestricted nature of their loving feelings, bhava, demonstrating that such love overcomes the bounds of social convention. The word bandhanam, quote, their worldly bonds, end quote, refers to the bondage of living in the midst of elders who oppose their meeting with Sri Krishna. Go ahead.
To further establish the transcendental nature of the gopis' divine forms, Sri Jiva Goswami refers to the verses describing the Abhisara, namely the gopis' efforts to reach their rendezvous with Krishna when he summoned them by playing on his flute. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-6, Sri Shukra describes that on that full moon night, some gopis were busy serving their husbands or feeding babies and could not escape, feeling an intense desire to meet with Krishna, but being unable to reach him, they meditated on him with closed eyes. Since they could not tolerate separation from Krishna, they gave up their bodies made up of the gunas of Prakriti and attained him.
One explanation of this incident is that these gopis were not the eternal associates of Krishna. They were sadhana siddhas, or those who attained the state of gopis through the culture of bhakti. Their bodies were not transcendental, and thus they were not eligible to associate with Krishna directly. By meditation on Krishna, they became completely purified of all material taint and attained transcendental bodies. Then, in those divine bodies, they were able to meet with Krishna. This again demonstrates through negative inference, Vyatireka, that the internally perfect gopis have spiritual bodies and are thus eternal associates of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-10, it is said that the sadhana siddha gopis became free of all inauspiciousness. The question arises, what auspiciousness could possibly be present in the gopis who were so intent on Krishna? This cannot refer to any sort of residual reaction to past deeds, since the gopis were definitely not influenced by karma. Moreover, bhakti is the beginning of all auspiciousness, as stated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 11:17, 27 through 32. Taking all this into consideration, Sri Jiva Goswami explains that the word asubha here refers to obstacles in meeting Krishna. These obstacles were consumed in the fire of intolerable separation from him. Simultaneously, they were also free from mangala, auspiciousness, which means that they were released from their exclusive dependence on the assistance of their girlfriends in the attempt to meet with Krishna. This means that they became perfect and were able to attain him. So they didn't depend on anybody but themselves, and they gave up their bodies. That they were just willing to die for Krishna. That's basically what he's saying. And in that process, they became purified. Go ahead.
Sometimes words are used in connection with a person or a circumstance where their conventional meaning is impossible. In it, it in then or it is then necessary to reinterpret these words in a manner that is appropriate to the context. The meaning thus derived will not be found in any dictionary. For example, Bhagavan is free of all, uh, is affirmed in the Shrutis. Uh, Shruti Ayam Atma Apahata Patma. The Supreme Self is free from all sin. Uh, I don't know what's
Chandogya
C8U.
Upanishad.
Chandogya Upanishad 871. Uh, Yet in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:89-11, Vishnu remarked that he became released of all sin by the touch of Bhrigu's foot on his chest. In a similar vein, Sri Krishna says that he walks behind his devotees to become purified by the dust from their feet. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-16. In these contexts, words such as agham, literally sin, cannot be taken in their primary sense. Similarly, in the verse under discussion, the word asubha in relation to the gopis cannot be taken in its conventional sense. In the subsequent verse of Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-12, King Parikshit raises a pertinent question about the gopis' attainment of Sri Krishna. They were not meditating on Krishna as Brahman, the absolute reality, but as their paramour, Jara. So, how could they become free of the gunas? When one meditates on Brahman or Bhagavan, he or she becomes free of the gunas, because Brahman and Bhagavan are themselves beyond the gunas. The gopis, however, thought of Krishna only as their lover, just as in everyday life a girl or married woman may love a man. The gopis meditation on Krishna was not that he is Bhagavan, but a charming, handsome youth. Krishna is replete with all qualities, gunas. So how could the gopis be freed from the gunas by thinking of him as their paramour? This is the intention behind the king's question to Shuka.
So there's 2 points here in these 2 paragraphs. Have you ever heard this pastime where Brigham Muni kicked Vishnu in the chest?
Yeah,
Yeah. And Krishna, obviously, when Brigham Muni he attacked his brother with harsh words, that was a verbal offense. And then he ignored Brahma, and Brahma was pissed, and Shiva's wife had to stop him from killing him. But
yeah,
Vishnu he kicked him like a physical offense. He kicked him right in the chest when he was sitting there with Lakshmi on the bed, and and he apologized. Oh, my chest is so hard. You must have hurt your foot. But now my foot is purified. Now you can't purify Krishna. See, therefore, you can't take this as a literal um, word. You can't be Krishna can't be purified. He's already pure. And so, also when he walks behind the devotees so he can be free from all sins by the dust that devotees kick up from their feet. He walks behind them. Krishna does no sin. The only reason he's saying this is because he wants to feel the love of his, he wants to be the servant of the devotees, and Krishna is serving the devotees are serving him. It's an ever increasing um, you know, reciprocal relationship. So therefore, it doesn't have anything to do with Krishna's sins or Krishna being released from sin. It's just a reciprocal relationship between the devotees and Krishna. So you can't really take those terms literally. And next, Jiva Goswami is going to describe how it is that, these girls who were sadhana bhaktas, they were just ordinary, they were acting as ordinary girls. They loved Krishna's gunas, the qualities of Krishna, because they thought of him as their paramour. So how could this purify them and become free from material qualities? And so here's the next 2 paragraphs here. Um, Here, it is important to understand that Krishna is not a paramour and that he does not become one just because the gopis think of him in that way. If one mistakes a rope for a snake, it doesn't mean that the rope has factually become a snake. They use this example of a rope and a snake many, many times. It's a refutation for all the Mayavadi analogies too. Like somehow the living entity's perception of something is only the only real thing, and actually the whole universe is illusion. And so Jiva really takes that apart too in other parts of the Krishna Sandarbha. The gopis' love for Krishna is with Jarabudi, with the effective conviction of that he is their paramour. This is just to illustrate the intensity of their love for him. It is because of this intensity that they were able to give up everything for his sake, including the moral path upheld by Vedic culture, Aryapata, as expressed by Uddhava. I was thinking about this today, and I used to be a fan of Emerson. You ever heard of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Transcendentalist?
I've heard his name, but I'm not really familiar with anything.
He's a 19th century transcendentalist. There was a whole cadre of them in eastern New England. Um, Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, and Ralph Waldo Emerson, they were actually contemporaries of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Emerson actually wrote to him because he was really interested in Vedic literature. But
Hmm.
I used to really like his writings, and I used to read his books when I was in high school back in the 70s. And he wrote something about enthusiasm. You know what the word enthusiasm means? Maybe you saw my post in Facebook. Did you see that?
Is it in Theos? Like
Yeah, and
in
yes, it
joy?
means it
Something about in
means
feelings or
in
something?
and means in within God within. Theos means God, and so God. is within you. And so enthusiasm also means an intense desire. And Rupa Goswami explains in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and also Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that the only price that you need to get Krishna is intense desire, like
Mm.
greed. You need to be greedy to get
Yeah,
Krishna.
that's
That is the price, and you have to pay that price. And if it's available, pay it immediately and get that purchase that with that kind of greed. So that is the nature of intensity or the intensity of enthusiasm. And I was thinking, if you actually ever want to do something great for Krishna, enthusiasm is part of the price for doing something great. Emerson said in his essay called Circles, he said, nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. In other words, without being invested with Krishna in your heart and actually trying to serve him in a in a meaningful, enthusiastic way, serving Krishna's desire, unless you do that with intensity, then you can never do anything great, like half-ass, sitting, like and just chanting your rounds mechanically or doing something just lackadaisically, take it
mm,
or leave it. That's not devotional service. What the greatest artists, the greatest devotees were always intense. Christian, like Prabhupada, he came to the United States and there's a book written about him by Malti's ex-husband, Shamasundar, who started the Krishna consciousness movement in London and recruited the Beatles, George Harrison, John Lennon. And Prabhupada actually stayed at London's estate in Tittenhurst in London, near London, and he was always doing those kind of things. And because Prabhupada, he compared it to like hunting an animal. Like if you hunt a regular rabbit or something, nobody's going to like give you any kind of credit for that. But if you bag a rhino, then that's completely different. So that
mm,
Shamasundar has a three volume trilogy called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. So
mm,
they were always going after big things. He never
yeah,
thought small. You go meet the Beatles. Go ask George Harrison for money, even though he would never even dream of asking him for money. Prabhupada said, just drop my name and ask him for money because he wanted to print the Krishna book. And have you ever heard this pastime?
uh-uh,
Yeah, it's amazing pastime. I read this in this book because this devotee he wrote about it. George Harrison was having a party at a friend's house in London, and his friend was a sculptor, and it was raining that night. It was a very severe thunderstorm, and there was thunder and lightning and everything. And Prabhupada had asked him because he wanted to print this Krishna book, a beautiful 2 volume, big book. It's like maybe 16 inches tall with a beautiful silver cover, the original two
mm,
volume Krishna book with beautiful paintings in it. And he needed money to print this, and because he owed some um, balance from the Back to Godhead magazines that he hadn't been paying, and so he wanted help from George Harrison, and he just said, "You just tell him my name. And tell him that you want me to help. I want him to help me print these books." And so he waited right to the very last minute of the party, and then all of a sudden, it was just about ready to leave, and Shama Sundar asked George, he said, he showed him the Krishna book, like paintings and stuff. And he said, Prabhupada would like your help to print this book. And at that point, lightning struck the house and all the lights went out.
oh yeah, I heard this one. Wow,
and uh,
yeah,
and then after a moment, the lights came back on again, and George Harrison had a smile from ear to ear, and Shamsundar said, I've heard about signs from Krishna, but this is ridiculous. And
yeah,
so, like he asked him for money, even though he was like loath to do that, because you don't ask these people. They spend their whole lives being asked for track down for money. Everybody asks them for money. And
yeah,
so, but Prabhupada asked him to do that, and he did, and he printed that book, and he actually gave a lot more than that too. Prabhupada said that George Harrison did more to help Krishna consciousness than a lot of his sannyasi disciples had done. Anyway, do you
Yeah.
have any questions with this? We're almost out of time here, but I just thought I'd throw in
Oh
that.
no, I love reading like this. This is great.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we'll continue where we left off in the next session next Sunday. I've kind of given up on the daily thing because nobody was interested, so that's been canceled. I'm just going to have like more like a podcast, like all these guys have everybody has a podcast now, and they ask, they do kind of an interview, and then there can be like a question and answer session later on. But so that's the way I'm going to format these types of discussions. The first half hour, and if anybody else joins, then they can go from there. But anyway, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next
yeah,
week, hopefully.
thank,
Krishna
yeah,
willing.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Haribo.
Hare Bo.